Among the thousands of clay tablets unearthed from the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, a few stand out not because they celebrate kings or gods, but because they whisper about ordinary people and extraordinary crimes. One such text, often called the Silent Wife of Isin, offers us a rare glimpse into how homicide, complicity, and moral responsibility were understood in Sumerian society nearly 4,000 years ago. This is not a heroic epic or a religious hymn. It is a legal, moral narrative, preserved in fragmentary form, that reads almost like a proto-crime report. At its heart lies a disturbing question that still haunts modern courtrooms: is silence a crime? Isin, law, order, and the aftermath of empire. To understand the case, we must first situate it in its historical setting. Isin, a city-state in southern Mesopotamia, rose to prominence after the collapse of the third dynasty of Ur around 2004 BCE. This was a period of political fragmentation, but also of intense legal creativity. Kings of Isin styled themselves as restorers of justice, heirs to Ur's bureaucratic and moral order. This is the world of law codes, oaths before gods, and scribes trained to record not only transactions, but wrongdoing. Justice was not abstract, it was embedded in daily life, enforced through local courts, assemblies of elders, and divine sanction. The Silent Wife text likely dates to the Old Babylonian period, when Sumerian was already becoming a learned language, used in schools and legal exempla. That detail matters, because it suggests the story was meant to teach, not merely to record. The case, murder and an unspoken witness. The tablet tells us of a man who commits murder. His exact identity and motive are unclear due to textual damage. What is clear, however, is that his wife knew about the crime. She neither reported it nor spoke against her husband. She remained silent. In the text, her silence is not portrayed neutrally. It is emphasized, repeated, almost underlined by the narrative. She is not accused of striking the blow, yet she is morally implicated. The text frames her not simply as a passive observer, but as someone whose silence enabled injustice. Eventually, the crime is discovered. The husband is condemned. But strikingly, the wife does not escape judgment. Her silence becomes the focal point of the case. Silence as action in Sumerian thought. Here we reach the philosophical heart of the story. In modern legal systems, silence can sometimes be protected, a right. In ancient Sumer, however, silence could be interpreted as a form of action. The Sumerian moral universe was built on balance: truth versus falsehood, justice versus chaos, order versus disorder. To know of a murder and remain silent was to allow disorder to persist. The gods themselves were thought to punish not only criminals, but those who failed to uphold justice. The Silent Wife is therefore not just a character, she is a moral problem. Her silence disrupts the social fabric. In the logic of the text, silence equals consent. Gender, power, and responsibility. At this point, we must be careful not to project modern assumptions backward. Was the wife truly free to speak? Would accusing her husband have endangered her life? These questions matter, and the text frustratingly refuses to answer them. What we can say is that Sumerian legal texts often recognized women as legal actors. Women could own property, testify, initiate divorce, and in some cases bring lawsuits. Silence, therefore, was not always forced, it could be judged as a choice. Still, I find this aspect deeply unsettling. The text does not ask whether the wife was afraid. It does not consider coercion. Instead, it treats her as morally autonomous, and therefore culpable. This reveals a harsh truth about ancient justice: moral clarity often outweighed compassion. Punishment and moral didacticism. The surviving tablet suggests that the wife, like the husband, meets a severe fate, possibly execution, though the exact penalty is debated among scholars. What matters more than the sentence itself is the message. This was a didactic story, likely used in scribal education. It taught future judges and administrators that justice must be absolute. Knowing about evil and failing to act was itself a crime. In this sense, the text functions less like a court transcript and more like a legal parable. It simplifies reality in order to communicate a principle: silence before injustice is intolerable. Comparing ancient and modern justice. Reading this case today, it is impossible not to compare it with modern debates about complicity. Whistleblowers, bystanders, accessory liability, these are not new problems. The Sumerians were already grappling with them 4 millennia ago. Yet modern legal systems tend to distinguish sharply between action and omission, between doing harm and failing to prevent it. The silent wife collapses that distinction. Moral responsibility is collective, and silence is morally loud. Personally, I find this both admirable and dangerous. Admirable, because it insists on ethical courage. Dangerous, because it leaves no room for fear, coercion, or vulnerability. Why this case still matters. What makes the silent wife of Isin so compelling is not the murder itself, but the uncomfortable mirror it holds up to us. How often do people today remain silent in the face of wrongdoing, at work, in families, in politics, because speaking is risky? The Sumerians would have judged such silence harshly. Perhaps too harshly. But perhaps they understood something we prefer to forget: justice depends not only on laws, but on voices. This small, damaged tablet reminds us that the history of law is also the history of moral anxiety. Long before modern courts, humans were already asking, when does silence become guilt?